My name is Caroline Poynton. I am recording this
Suddenly
today about Islam is facing the most dangerous collapse in the entire history. Well, I was wondering why, but yeah, some of it sounds pretty alright.
with over 2 billion followers,
Very.
Islam is one of the most powerful religions on earth. But something catastrophic is happening. Silently and almost invisibly, it's being erased from the map. Not by war, not by politics, but by something far simpler and utterly unstoppable. A force that Islam can never control. It's March 27, 2035. The morning call to prayer that once echoed through cities like Casablanca has fallen silent in many neighborhoods. What was once unthinkable has become reality as mosques across the world stand empty or repurposed. Islam, the faith that shaped civilizations for 1,400 years, has experienced an unprecedented decline in just 2 decades. All because of something that seemed so innocent at first, a Wi-Fi signal. Had anyone suggested a few years prior that smartphones would do more damage to Islam than 1,000 crusades? Unstoppable, a force that Islam can never control. It's March 27, 2030.
Alright, is that more like Africa? Hang on.
But by something...
That's Africa, that, isn't it? That's on the other side of Palestine. Isn't it? That's Africa, more like. So that's where... No, why? Yeah. Because there's Saudi Arabia there, not middle. And Palestine's here. So they've come from over there to go to Palestine in the first place. Yeah. And they come from Saudi Arabia in the first place to go to Africa. And anywhere else. Yeah.
Are simpler and utterly unstoppable. A force that Islam...
But what I don't like is it isn't just everything came from Africa. No, it didn't. Black people wasn't the first people on the fucking earth at all. In fact, the first thing that maybe represents the type of human on earth, if you watch about the fucking earth, did look like a monkey thing or whatever it was, but was in Germany. So it would have been fucking German, thanks. Well, which was a little, looked like a rock, which was classed as Germany and the rest of Europe. So actually, there was apes in Africa and there were also apes in Europe. England and Ireland, we would have been part of Europe before it broke off, yeah? So we would have been part of Brussels, possibly, France and Brussels, possibly. Maybe attached to a bit of Germany, well, Finland, Finland. So I don't know what they're talking about. They should get the geography right, really, shouldn't they?
Can never control. It's March 27, 2035. The morning call to prayer that once echoed through cities like Casablanca has fallen silent in many names.
Casablanca, that was like, well, Egypt, innit? Going up towards, well, yeah, Egypt.
Neighborhoods. What was once unthinkable has become reality as mosques across the world stand empty or repurposed. Islam, the faith that shaped civilizations for 1,400 years, has experienced an unprecedented decline in just 2 decades. All because of something that seemed so innocent at first, a Wi-Fi signal. Had anyone suggested a few years prior that smartphones would do more damage to Islam than 1,000 crusades, they'd have been dismissed as delusional. Yet that's exactly what's happening. Not through conquest or force, but through the quiet revolution of information. Today, we'll uncover how this digital transformation occurred, why online connectivity became Islam's greatest vulnerability, and what this unprecedented shift means for the future of Muslim faith in our connected world. What the internet is doing to Islam today has actually happened before, and the parallels are shocking. 15th century Europe. A German innovator named Johannes Gutenberg invents the printing press. Suddenly, priests lose their monopoly on the Bible. For centuries, the church controlled access, interpreting scripture in Latin, essentially gatekeeping salvation. The printing press changed all that. The Bible was translated into local languages, and ordinary people could read it for the first time. And what did they find? Contradictions, corruption, and rules that didn't quite align with the church's teachings. Enter Martin Luther, monk and theologian who wasn't thrilled with the church selling indulgences, basically a get-out-of-hell card for a fee. His 95 Theses called out this corruption, arguing that salvation came through faith, not cash. With the printing press, his ideas spread like wildfire across Europe, making the church's control over religious thought impossible to maintain. And you think the Catholic Church was upset about Luther? Just wait until you hear what happened next. The Protestant Reformation erupted, a tidal wave of new denominations, debates, and dissenters challenging church authority. This shattered the clergy's exclusive claim to spiritual truth and propelled Europe toward individual interpretation and independent thought. The printing press effectively dismantled centuries of religious dogma. As people engaged directly with Scripture, they questioned not just church practices, but Christianity's fundamental tenets. Faith transformed into something personal and decentralized, removing religious institutions as the sole arbiters of salvation and morality. The once unshakable authority of these institutions began its slow collapse. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. The Enlightenment followed, a period when science, philosophy, and reason began to take center stage. The result? Growing skepticism of religion as a whole and the rise of secularism in Europe. Over the centuries, this trend snowballed, leading to societies where secular worldviews, not Christianity, became dominant in many countries. In places like Sweden, France, and the UK, religious adherence is now at historic lows, with vast majorities identifying as atheist, agnostic, or spiritual, but not religious. It didn't happen overnight, but the printing press lit the spark that set this transformation in motion. Now you're probably wondering, if the printing press could shape Christianity to its core, why did Islam seem immune for so long? The answer might shock you. Christianity had a head start on Islam. Muhammad came onto the scene in the 7th century, claiming divine revelations in a cave near Mecca. And many scholars agree that Islam incorporated theological and narrative elements from Judaism and Christianity into an Arabian religious framework. Even many Quranic stories like Adam and Eve, Noah's Ark, and Moses parting the sea appear in both the Bible and the Quran, albeit with variations that align with Arabian context. But unlike Christianity, which had centuries to adapt to modernity and face challenges like the Enlightenment, Islam has largely avoided that reckoning through empires, caliphates, and strict clerical control, and maintained a tighter grip on interpretation and authority. A perfect example of this adaptation disparity can be found in how each religion responded to scientific discoveries. When Galileo challenged geocentrism in the 17th century, the Catholic Church eventually reconciled with heliocentrism. By the 19th century, many Christian denominations were reinterpreting Genesis to accommodate Darwin's theory of evolution. Contrast this with how many Islamic clerics still reject evolution outright, with several Muslim-majority countries banning its teaching in schools. A 2018 Pew Research survey found that acceptance of evolution among Muslims in various countries averaged around 27%, compared to 68% among Christians in developed nations. But what happens when a religion establishes control through fear? This next part might make you uncomfortable. This tight grip involved enforcing the faith by any means necessary. Take the apostate wars after Muhammad's death, when several tribes decided they were done with Islam. Following his death, Abu Bakr, the first caliph, launched brutal campaigns to bring them back into the fold. Their crime? Apostasy, leaving Islam. This harsh stance wasn't a bug in the system, it was a feature, a way to ensure Islam's survival by stamping out dissent early on. Any deviation from the pure teachings of Islam as practiced by Muhammad and his companions was labeled heresy. In other words, questioning or adapting the faith to new circumstances wasn't just frowned upon. It could get you killed. Reformation was not an option. Just when you thought it couldn't get more controlling, It does. A cornerstone of Islamic teachings is to keep the faithful in line. The Quran itself warns believers about probing too deeply. It says, "O you who have believed, do not ask about things which, if they are shown to you, will distress you." Quran, chapter 5, verse 101. Translation: don't ask questions you might not like the answers to. This effectively discouraged curiosity and intellectual exploration. Muhammad reinforced this stance in Hadith, reportedly declaring, "The greatest sinners among the Muslims are those who ask too many questions." The message was clear. Unquestioning faith is virtuous. Inquiry is dangerous. The reasoning? Questions inevitably expose inconsistencies in the doctrine. Here's the irony that no one saw coming. This tight control over beliefs and practices succeeded for centuries, enabling Islam to expand while maintaining remarkable uniformity across diverse empires. The paradox, however, lies in this rigidity. Any belief system that aggressively suppresses change and inquiry ultimately becomes fragile and vulnerable to collapse. Throughout history, dissenters had no infrastructure to connect, share doubts, or build communities. Then everything changed with the arrival of the internet, a borderless realm where every question, no matter how forbidden, found a voice. The internet has revolutionized how people approach religious questioning. According to former Muslims interviewed by XNA, Ex-Muslims of North America, in their 2023 survey of apostates, online forums were cited as the primary catalyst for religious doubting by 78% of respondents. One respondent from Saudi Arabia described how digital connections broke their isolation. Growing up in a country where apostasy is punishable by death creates an overwhelming sense of isolation. You believe you're alone in your doubts. The internet shattered that illusion overnight. Suddenly, I discovered thousands of others asking the same questions I've been afraid to whisper.
Why are they doing it?
Islam stood exposed, its layers peeled back to reveal contradictions, moral inconsistencies, and centuries of dogma that had never faced genuine scrutiny. The digital revolution accomplished something unprecedented. It forced an entire belief system into the unforgiving spotlight of public accountability. Religious authorities who had controlled the narrative for generations suddenly found themselves powerless, their exclusive interpretive authority evaporating in the face of mass information access. You might be thinking this sounds far-fetched. Prepare to be surprised. The data tells a compelling story. According to research from Pew Research Center, around 24% of people raised as Muslims in the U.S. end up leaving the faith, a number that closely mirrors the disaffiliation rates of Christianity in the same region. Globally, the trend is harder to track due to the stigma and legal punishment, but it's clear apostasy is on the rise and the internet is playing a massive role. Platforms like Reddit's Ex-Muslim with over 400,000 members and X hashtags like #ExMuslimBecause have created safe spaces for people to openly discuss their doubts, share their stories, and find solidarity. And this isn't just limited to Western countries. In places like Saudi Arabia, surveys suggest a significant portion of the youth, up to 25%, identify as non-religious. Think about that. In a country where atheism is equated with terrorism, 1 in 4 young people is questioning religion. The digital age has given rise to a phenomenon sociologists now refer to as virtual ummas, online religious communities that transcend borders and geography. These digital spaces enable believers, doubters, and ex-believers to interact in ways that were previously impossible. As Dr. Samina Ali, professor of Islamic Studies at Georgetown University, explains, what we're witnessing is unprecedented in Islamic history, the democratization of religious interpretation. When a 16-year-old in Indonesia can directly challenge a fatwa from Al-Azhar scholars on X and gather substantial support, traditional authority structures begin to crumble. Statistical analysis from the World Values Survey highlights this generational shift. Among Muslims under 30 in countries such as Turkey, Lebanon, and Tunisia, religious practice declined by 12 to 17% between 2012 and 2022. Simultaneously, the proportion of youth identifying as spiritual but not religious has nearly tripled. You might find it hard to believe, but digital connectivity has already sparked dramatic shifts in traditionally Islamic societies. A 2020 study published in The Conversation revealed that in Iran, religious belief has undergone a seismic transformation. Research by the Group for Analyzing and Measuring Attitudes in Iran found that while 78% of Iranians believed in God, only 32% identified as Shia Muslims. Furthermore, 47% reported having transitioned from being religious to non-religious, and only 30% identified as Muslim, starkly contrasting with the government's official claim of 99.5% Muslim identification. Just when you thought that was shocking, wait until you see what's happening online. The internet has transformed Islam into a global meme. On platforms like TikTok and YouTube, creators openly critique Islamic doctrines, hadith, and controversial aspects of Muhammad's life, all with a healthy dose of satire. Online, questions that might lead to prosecution or death in some countries are freely debated. Why did Muhammad ban dogs and music, but not slavery? Why did he marry Aisha at such a young age? Are we seriously meant to believe he rode a flying steed to heaven and split the moon? For younger Muslims, these questions help shatter taboos. There's also the rise of public ex-Muslim voices. Figures like Ayan Hirsi Ali, digital creators such as the apostate prophet. These voices, once unimaginable in public discourse, now lead the charge in normalizing critique of Islam. What's most astonishing is the speed of the shift. Dr. Mustafa Akyol, senior fellow at the Cato Institute, observes what took Christianity centuries to experience, public questioning, reformation, secularization, Islam is going through in just decades, largely due to the internet's rapid spread of ideas. This acceleration is evident in how Islamic authorities respond to criticism. In 2010, threats against cartoonists depicting Muhammad led to widespread self-censorship across Western media. Yet by 2025, major streaming platforms began distributing shows and documentaries that critically examine Islamic history, despite backlash from religious institutions. The economic angle is equally significant. According to analysis from the Technology and Religion Institute's 2024 Global Survey, countries with over 85% internet penetration show religious disaffiliation rates 3 to 4 times higher than countries with less than 40% connectivity. The link between open information access and declining religious adherence is becoming increasingly clear. This wave of critique isn't coming only from within. In the West, Islam's protected status in public discourse has eroded over time. The late Christopher Hitchens, a vocal proponent of secularism and free speech, regularly challenged Islamic doctrines. Cultural moments also played a role. In 2006, South Park aired episodes mocking Muhammad, sparking global outrage and renewed debates over satire's limits. Then came the 2015 Charlie Hebdo attack, a tragedy that not only exposed the risks of religious criticism, but also galvanized defenders of free expression worldwide. These voices and events have significantly eroded the fear surrounding criticism of Islam. The taboo has been pierced, and now Islam's sacred aura is fading faster than anyone could have predicted. No longer untouchable, the religion is being questioned, debated, and ridiculed in ways that would have been unthinkable just a generation ago. Just listen to Imam Muhammad Tawhidi's warning. It is happening continuously. It is going to become an avalanche, a tsunami that is going to hit our community in such a way that we will have a very difficult time standing. It will knock us over. But if you think that's dramatic, you haven't seen what's happening next. Islamic regimes are intensifying digital repression in response. Iran, Pakistan, and Saudi Arabia have ramped up surveillance, censorship, and punishment for online dissent. Yet these efforts consistently backfire. The decentralized nature of the internet makes information nearly impossible to control. Every blocked website triggers VPN workarounds. Encrypted chat platforms emerge. Anonymous voices rise to replace silenced ones. Censorship now creates the opposite of its intended effect. When content is removed from one site, it appears across dozens more. The imprisonment of a single atheist blogger often transforms local suppression into global resistance. Far from silencing dissent, These tactics inspire others to ask forbidden questions and share the answers worldwide. The result is an accelerating cycle of religious questioning that amplifies with each attempt to suppress it. The world is witnessing a historic transformation. A faith that once executed those who merely whispered doubt now finds itself openly critiqued, challenged, and abandoned by millions in real time.
They're still doing it in
This
England.
unprecedented exodus stems from a simple technological reality. The digital age has made the suppression of questions fundamentally impossible. Now, defenders of Islam might argue, wait a minute, Islam is growing at a fast rate regardless, and sure, on the surface that's true. But here's what they don't want you to know. Let's look a little deeper. Islam's rapid growth isn't coming from widespread conversions. In fact, it's almost entirely birth rate driven, concentrated in underdeveloped countries with high fertility rates. For example, countries like Niger, Somalia, and Afghanistan have some of the highest fertility rates in the world, averaging 4 to 7 children per woman. These are also regions where female empowerment and education rates are alarmingly low. Research consistently shows a strong connection between fertility rates and women's access to education, healthcare, and economic opportunities. In many Muslim-majority countries, restrictive cultural norms and limited access to education keep women out of the workforce and in traditional roles, leading to larger families. Compare this to Western countries where Muslim immigrant families experience a noticeable drop in fertility rates over just 1 or 2 generations. For instance, Muslim women in Germany or the US often have fertility rates closer to the national average, about 1.5 to 2 children per woman. Why the change? Because once women have access to education, contraception, and greater autonomy, family sizes tend to shrink. This pattern is remarkably consistent across diverse cultural settings. A longitudinal study tracking Muslim immigrants in France over 3 generations found that by the 3rd generation, fertility rates had declined from 5.8 children per woman to just 2.1.
Giving birth for fucking 12.
To native French rates. Similar patterns emerge in the UK, Canada, and Australia. The educational factor cannot be overstated. According to UNESCO's Global Education Database, for every additional year of education a Muslim woman receives, her fertility rate drops by approximately 0.3 children. When comparing regions within the same Muslim-majority country, areas with higher female literacy rates consistently show lower birth rates and higher rates of religious disaffiliation. The economic implications are equally significant. The World Bank's analysis shows that as per capita GDP increases in Muslim-majority countries, religious observance tends to decrease, particularly among the professional classes. This helps explain why wealthy Gulf states now struggle with rising secularism despite massive investments in religious education. Economic development inevitably brings exposure to global ideas and values that challenge traditional religious frameworks. Most revealing of all is the unprecedented rise in apostasy among born Muslims, particularly in Western societies. Even more striking is the data on Islamic converts. Research indicates that between 50 and 70% of Americans who convert to Islam eventually leave the faith. This creates a stunning reality. The majority of those who voluntarily embrace Islam ultimately choose to leave it behind.
Anyway.
Pew research highlights that in the U.S., although Islam gains new followers through conversion, the number of people raised Muslim who leave the faith is significantly higher, about 23 to 25%. Of those born into Muslim families eventually abandon Islam. Globally, Islam's image as the fastest growing religion needs context. It's a demographic illusion. Yes, the numbers are increasing, not because of ideological appeal. It's a birth rate story rooted in underdeveloped regions and one that is increasingly challenged as Muslims migrate to more secular, empowered societies. So when people argue that Islam's growth is inevitable, the truth is far more complex. As education levels rise and the internet reaches even the most remote corners, the dynamics will shift. High education, especially for women, fosters critical thinking and the questioning of long-held beliefs. Combine that with exposure to diverse ideas online, and suddenly people aren't limited to their local imam's teachings. They're engaging with ex-Muslims, historians, scientists, and philosophers. This is already happening in places like Iran and Saudi Arabia. The rise of the non-religious among the educated and internet-savvy youth shows how powerful this combination is. This brings us to perhaps the most surprising development in this unfolding story. Many Muslims are either misguided or engaging in some creative reinterpretation of their religion. Some do it intentionally with a concept called taqiyya, while others simply repeat what they've been told without digging deeper. Either way, they end up whitewashing Islam. You've probably heard the excuses. Islam is feminist. Sure, a religion where a man can marry 4 women and a woman's testimony is worth half of a man's in court. Totally feminist. Or Muhammad was not a warlord with a child bride. Let's just ignore the countless hadith that say otherwise, right? Islam has no colonial past, except for centuries of conquest under the Ottomans and other empires. Slavery never happened in Islam, conveniently forgetting it was sanctioned in both the Quran and the Hadith. The list goes on. Women's rights, LGBTQ acceptance, tolerance, you name it. The denial and whitewashing are almost impressive. But here's a twist. In trying to make Islam look more palatable to modern audiences, many are inadvertently reforming it by denying or downplaying the less savory parts of the faith. They're reshaping it, consciously or not, into something that aligns more closely with modern values. And if this continues over the long term, it could actually lead to a large-scale reformation. This inadvertent reformation isn't merely theoretical. It's already unfolding in real time. Take the case of progressive Muslim communities in cities like London, Berlin, and New York, where LGBTQ-affirming mosques now exist, despite Islam's traditional prohibitions on homosexuality. Or consider the growing movement of female imams in Western countries, directly challenging centuries of male-dominated religious leadership. While traditionalists may dismiss these efforts as fringe, their influence is expanding through social media and reaching even conservative Muslim circles. The Muslim feminist movement provides perhaps the most striking example. Organizations like Musawa, meaning equality in Arabic, reinterpret Islamic texts through a feminist lens, challenging patriarchal interpretations that have held sway for centuries. Their advocacy has already influenced legal reforms in countries like Morocco and Tunisia, which have modified family codes to grant women greater rights, all while maintaining claims to Islamic legitimacy. Meanwhile, digital Islamic scholarship platforms are flourishing. These sites, like Critical Islamic Studies, welcome historical critical approaches to religious texts, a method once considered anathema to Islamic learning. With millions of monthly visitors from Muslim-majority countries, they're creating spaces where even the most fundamental assumptions about doctrine and history can be questioned. It's exactly what happened with Christianity over time. Reinterpretations and reformist movements softened it into what we see today. So, whether they realize it or not, Muslims insisting that Islam is feminist, tolerant, and progressive are planting the seeds for a very different version of the religion. And that, ironically, might be the reformation they claim Islam doesn't need. It's almost poetic, really. The same people defending the faith are unknowingly transforming it. And maybe, just maybe, that's how the story ends. Of course, for any meaningful reform to take root, certain conditions are crucial. This kind of transformation only thrives in environments where free thought is protected, places that embrace integration and resist the pull of hardliners. In the West, that means standing firm against policies that undermine these freedoms. Mass unchecked immigration needs to be carefully managed. Blasphemy laws disguised as hate speech regulations must be resisted. The right to question, criticize, and even mock is the foundation of intellectual progress. Without it, reform collapses before it can begin. And yet, the catalyst for this transformation, the silent force rewriting the narrative, will almost certainly be the internet. A network with no borders, no clerics, and no fear of blasphemy, it has become the great equalizer of ideas. History may ultimately record that Islam wasn't transformed by military conquest or political revolution, but by something far more subtle, yet infinitely more powerful. The unstoppable flow of digital information that connected questioning minds across the globe. But what do you think? Is the future of Islam being reshaped by the internet? Or is this just the beginning of something even bigger? Let us know in the comments below, and if you found this video insightful, make sure you like, subscribe, tap that bell so you don't miss what's coming next. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.
Well, that was quite interesting, actually.
hundreds of tiny pills spill out. Then another, and another. Millions of them.
Hey,
This wasn't a chip factory. It was a drug empire
hey, what's that?
that is producing potato.
Shaped by the inner bell, so you don't miss what's coming next. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.
One dictator, one drug, one empire built on addiction. What if I told you the Middle East's most powerful black market isn't oil or weapons, but a tiny white pill fueling wars, collapsing economies, and addicting an entire generation? This isn't fiction. It's happening. This is the story of how a forgotten German pharmaceutical became the most destructive force in the Muslim world. December 2024, Syrian rebels stormed through Damascus, weapons raised, expecting resistance. Instead, they find something that changes everything. A factory, officially listed as producing potato chips. But when they push through the doors, there are no potatoes. No production lines for snacks. Just copper coils, industrial air conditioning units, and something else. Piles of plastic fruits scattered across the floor. One rebel cracks open a fake orange. Hundreds of tiny pills spill out. Then another, and another. Millions of them. This wasn't a chip factory. It was a drug empire hiding in plain sight. Within days, similar scenes explode across Syria. A warehouse in Latakia packed floor to ceiling with pills. An airbase near Damascus, containers filled with chemicals and pill presses. The headquarters of Syria's 4th Armored Division, one of the most elite military units in the country, operating as a massive narcotics lab. The scale is staggering. Over 200 million pills seized in just 4 months. That's 20 times more than the Assad regime planned to seize in all of 2024. For years, Syria's dictator, Bashar al-Assad, denied running a drug operation. But the evidence now? Undeniable. Assad had built the largest Captagon empire the world has ever seen. And that tiny pill, it had already torn the Muslim world apart. But here's what nobody expected. This drug didn't start in a Syrian warehouse. It started in a German laboratory in 1961, created by scientists who thought they were helping people. They called it Captagon, the chemical name, phenethylamine, a combination of amphetamine and theophylline, designed as a wonder drug for treating narcolepsy and ADHD. Think of it as Ritalin's bigger, stronger cousin. Within years, Captagon spread across Europe. Long-haul truck drivers used it to stay awake on overnight routes. Students preparing for university exams swallowed it to power through study sessions. Some reports suggest military personnel experimented with it during training exercises. Anything to maintain peak alertness during grueling operations. Doctors loved it. Patients could stay alert, focused, productive for hours on end without the harsh blood pressure spikes of pure amphetamine. It seemed like the perfect pharmaceutical solution. All the benefits, fewer side effects. Clinical trials in the 1960s and 70s showed promising results. Patients with attention disorders showed marked improvement. Those suffering from chronic fatigue reported renewed energy. For nearly 2 decades, Captagon was prescribed across Europe and parts of the Middle East as legitimate medicine. But then people started noticing something wrong. Very wrong. Users began experiencing hallucinations, violent outbursts, paranoia, and worst of all, they couldn't stop taking it. The addiction potential was through the roof. By 1986, the World Health Organization had seen enough. Captagon was declared too dangerous for medical use. Production officially ceased. The drug was banned worldwide. That should have been the end of the story. It wasn't even close to the beginning. Because while legitimate pharmaceutical companies stopped making Captagon, someone else saw an opportunity. In the 1990s, Bulgarian traffickers, operating under the protection of corrupt officials in the crumbling Eastern Bloc, started cooking up counterfeit Captagon tablets in clandestine labs. And they knew exactly where to sell them. The Middle East. But why there? What made the Muslim world the perfect market for a banned German pharmaceutical? The answer lies in a unique collision of factors that nobody saw coming. In countries like Saudi Arabia, Islamic law strictly forbids alcohol and narcotics.
Yeah.
The penalties are severe: imprisonment, public lashings, even execution.
From there, moved
But
to England, but then it's all
Captagon, it arrived with
Muslim.
something other street drugs didn't have: legitimacy. It had
Because
been
what,
a
people do what
medicine,
they want.
a pharmaceutical product
But then
prescribed
it's
by
all for
doctors,
Muslim.
not a notorious
Don't
street
contradict
drug
it.
cooked up in some basement.
Yeah.
As a drug policy expert, Carolyn Rose explains, because Captagon has an illicit history, having been a pharmaceutical commodity from the 1960s to the mid-1980s, there's also less of a stigma in taking Captagon. To many young people in the Gulf, it didn't feel like they were doing drugs. They were just taking a pill, a performance enhancer, something to help them study, work, or get through the night.
So they're all
And the effects,
whizzing
they
people,
were enticing. Captagon delivers a potent rush of energy and confidence. Users feel awake, focused, talkative, even euphoric. It suppresses appetite and obliterates sleepiness. For students pulling all-nighters before exams, it became a secret weapon. For construction workers and truck drivers grinding through double shifts in scorching heat, it was survival. For wealthy young people in conservative Gulf societies looking for a covert way to party and dance until dawn, with none of the telltale smell of alcohol, it was perfect. The pills were cheap, too, just $10 to $20 each. Far more affordable than cocaine. By the early 2000s, demand was exploding. Captagon acquired a host of nicknames across the region. Abu Hilal in Arabic, meaning the one with two moons, referring to the logo stamped on many tablets. Some just called it Lafat. In Saudi Arabia, youth unemployment and crushing boredom created the perfect conditions. A rising generation caught between two strict social norms and the allure of modern life increasingly turned to this tiny pill as an outlet. Even the region's battlefields weren't immune. Reports emerged during the Syrian civil war that ISIS fighters were being fed Captagon pills before battles to heighten their aggression and numb their fears. Pro-Assad militias used it. Hezbollah guerrillas allegedly relied on it to fight for days without rest. Captagon became known as the jihadist drug, a pill that could make a fighter feel invincible. But as demand grew, so did something far more sinister. Because one dictator was watching this exploding market and seeing something nobody else did. Not just profit, leverage. In 2011, Syria was about to descend into hell. Bashar al-Assad's brutal crackdown on peaceful protests spiraled into full-blown civil war. Over the next decade, Assad would earn his place among history's most ruthless dictators, torturing and bombing his own people, using chemical weapons backed by Iran, Hezbollah, and Russia. But as Syria burned, Assad's regime faced a different kind of crisis. Money. International sanctions crushed the economy. The costs of war drained what little was left. Traditional industries, oil, tourism, agriculture, collapsed. Damascus was desperate for cash to pay soldiers and keep patronage networks loyal. Assad needed a lifeline, and he found one in the most unlikely place: drugs. Captagon was perfect. It could be produced cheaply in makeshift labs. The booming demand in nearby Gulf nations guaranteed massive profits. And perhaps most attractive to Assad, it was deniable. The regime could claim ignorance while quietly facilitating everything. By the mid-2010s, evidence mounted that elements of the Syrian state were actively involved in manufacturing and trafficking Captagon. But this wasn't just some rogue military unit looking to make extra cash. This went straight to the top. Assad's own brother, Maher al-Assad, commander of the elite 4th Armored Division, was repeatedly named as a kingpin orchestrating production and smuggling operations. Factories sprang up in regime-controlled areas, protected by military units. Ports like Latakia became major export hubs. The scale of production soon dwarfed anything the world had ever seen. By the early 2020s, experts estimated Syria was producing around 80% of the world's Captagon. Entire warehouses and industrial zones were repurposed into pill factories. Satellite images revealed it all: industrial pill presses, packaging centers, stockpiles of precursor chemicals. The numbers are brutal. Analysts estimated the trade was worth anywhere from $5.7 to $57 billion annually. That's approximately 3 times the combined revenue of all the Mexican cartels. Assad's regime was likely earning over $3 to $5 billion per year from
What they've done,
Captagon,
they've sold it
far
out into the
exceeding
vaccine.
Syria's legal exports
Yeah.
and even outstripping its
I bet
entire
that's gone
state
into the
budget.
vaccine. That
As one
definitely
journalist noted, Captagon had become the mainstay of the Assad economy.
That's why
Syria had
people
become a
died.
full-fledged narco state, a country where the
It was the
president's
heart
primary
to the,
export
you know,
was addiction.
blood to
But
the
the
heart,
really
whatever.
insane part? How they got the pills out. Smuggling networks fanned out from Syria like
Yeah,
arteries
yeah.
of a dark heart. The routes typically led south through Jordan into Saudi
Jordan,
Arabia,
yeah,
or
Saudi
west through
Arabia.
Lebanon, and out by sea to the other Gulf states.
Yeah, free
Convoys of
Palestine.
smugglers
There
raced
you go.
across the Syrian-Jordanian desert, sometimes engaging in deadly firefights with border patrols. Jordan beefed up its frontier security, adopting shoot-to-kill rules against drug smugglers by 2022. In one January 2022 incident, Jordanian forces killed 27 smugglers at several different points along the border. One Jordanian commander estimated there were 160 different smuggling groups operating from southern Syria alone. But here's where traffickers got creative, astonishingly creative. They hid pills inside fake oranges and plastic pomegranates, mixed among real fruits to fool customs inspectors. They filled cans of olive oil, bottles of milk, and even hollowed out individual sunflower seed shells with tiny doses of Captagon.
I guarantee
In May 2021, Saudi customs and